stood there for like 5 minutes, and that was their punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that's punishment enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember that too.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. I stand in the corners.
You have to stay in the corners?
Mm-hmm. I was put in the corner. Not with the dunce cap, but you know.
Last night you stood there?
No. He said he didn't have a dunce cap on, is what he
When I was little.
said.
Oh.
I remember standing in corners too.
Yeah.
Parents, they don't do a lot of things today that they used to do back then.
No.
I mean, my mother said that if or someone was spanked at that time, it's really just one pat in the bum. And it was just to wake you up. It's to get you out of your
Dream
thing and focus. That's what it was for. It never hurt. It just was a wake up.
You never told them that it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
I cried anyway.
Oh.
So you had two children, then you waited for 10 years, and then you had two more. So there was a big gap in there, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, he said he didn't know it was causing it.
Okay, so next subject.
So after 10 years, he found out what was causing it. And so we had two more.
Oh, gotcha. I see.
Yeah, and there was a boy, right? It's a very
The third one was a girl. And I said, I guess we're just supposed to have girls. So he said, we'll try once more. And do you remember, what was his name? The farmer, not the farmer, but the guy that used to come to visit us? Mr. Olson? No, not Mr.
No.
Well, anyway, they had to leave that day. And he rubbed my belly. And he said, oh, it's got a stem.
Oh!
He said, it's got a stem. It's going to be a boy. And by golly, it was. It had a stem. It was a boy. And his name was Roy.
Oh.
Marty. Doris and Marty. Doris and Marty.
And so he foresaw the future.
Yeah,
by rubbing your belly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doris and Marty. I couldn't think of his name.
I remember this one occasion where I forget what it was. It was some sort of a wedding years ago when I was a kid. I remember this guy. A couple of the old guys were pulling the bottles of champagne or wine to come from somewhere, and he goes, "I feel like a midwife." Because the wine bottle comes out. Look, it's a boy. And I remember asking my mother, "What does that really mean?" She's like, "I'll tell you later."
You're too young.
People had different ways of stating things over the years. That's for sure.
I'll tell you later. Yeah.
Yeah, really. And did you have and you talked so much about the animals that you remembered on the farm. I mean, I've spoken to other people who, when they were on the farm, it's not that they had any disrespect for anything, but everything was very matter of fact, of course, and they didn't have much relation with their animals. And I said to this other lady, you know Diana Retzlaff, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And she was just being straightforward, and she basically said, no, we didn't have cats in the house. We didn't have pets like that. And the animals stayed out there, and we did our thing. And but you have a slightly different
they stayed.
Attitude of that.
Most of them stayed outside. They knew when we had a bell. We rang the bell, and the animals would all come running, and Mama fed them all in this little area. And two little cats never ran away. They just stayed. So Mama opened the door, and they came in. So she didn't shoo them out. So guess what? They were my pets.
So that's sweet there. Yeah. See, that's a different perspective. Different perspective.
And if they had to go potty, they used to go to the door and scratch, and they let them out. So they trained themselves.
Nice. And as you had your children and they went to school, where did they go to school?
We trained them to scratch on the.
I still do that today.
Honey, I gotta. Still, you know, when you did have to go to the bathroom back in those days, did you have
Outside toilet.
you had an outside toilet, right? I was just gonna say you had a privy, right? Did you even have to go out to it at night, or did you have like a pot?
Oh, we had a pot under our bed,
Okay, yeah.
and we used the pot, and then in the morning, Mama would rinse that out, clean it up, and then push it back under our bed for the night.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Lucky her. But then again, we would say that today, wouldn't we? Back then, it was like anything else you did. It was a
Yeah,
routine.
it was normal.
It was normal. It was just normal what you did, and not a big deal. Although there must have been some people in the village of Burkhold still recall, the older folks there still recall people like the rag man, who would go around and sell things or collect dirty rags to wash.
Yeah,
things like that.
the rag man would collect dirty rags, and then they washed them, and he made strips out of it.
Huh.
Now, what was I going to say about that? What did you ask me about that?
Oh, about the rag man, for example, or the.
Do you remember him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember him.
These are people who did, like him, these are people who did odd jobs for
Mhm.
people as they went around.
Yeah. I remember him.
He had a reputation, I guess.
Oh, really? I've never, in all the years, I've never heard that.
Yeah,
Huh.
me neither.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then of course, as you go on, what did you get to know other people along the way as you had your own family? Did you talk with other people who were also having their own families and share different ideas or recipes? That kind
We
of thing?
had farmers market, and if I ate something that was so good I couldn't stand it, I would ask them for the recipe, and that's how recipes got passed around.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Things at the fire hall sometimes too, right? There would be things. Were there events at the? I remember as a kid events at the fire hall.
Yeah.
Was that true even when you were young?
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you participate in civic activities like that, like women's auxiliaries or choir or other things like that?
Oh yeah. There was some choirs. We had a children's choir.
Mom, Mom's dad was the fire chief.
John Heuer.
Ah, yeah. Okay,
So
great.
he was the fire chief,
Oh,
and so
Burkhold.
so like
Wow.
it's kind of like a big deal. Like he was like everyone knew Grandpa, right?
Yeah, and when we had a fire drill, that wasn't mandatory for state, but Grandpa said it's mandatory for me. So once a month he'd come around to different schools and ring the bell. Well, we hadn't done it for a whole week, a whole month, and he rang the bell. We all knew what it was, so we all stood up like little soldiers and marched out the door and stood along the driveway where he was.
Mm-hmm.
We had remembered what that bell meant.
Mm-hmm. Did you join any particular organizations in town, even as an adult growing up? And all
As
that?
an adult, but
Yeah.
not as a child. As a child, we just had the little things in school.
You were connected with the Legion, right?
Yeah, after I got older, I joined the Legion Auxiliary.
Mm. At post 1451?
American Legion Auxiliary, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Richard, what did your husband do for a living?
He was a carpenter.
Didn't he build a lot of the houses around Jago?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Not
more in
on-
Sanborn.
Sanborn.
He and his brother were carpenters, and they built 3 houses in a row on West Avenue. And then when the people looked them over, and they were built so much better than Johnson's houses, they thought, well, I'm going to have him build one for me. So they started buying lots and putting stakes in and giving mice.
He only did that for a few years, though, and then he went back to working for other contractors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then he did it enough that people found out that they were good carpenters.
Absolutely.
And that's a personal reputation too. I mean, people knew these guys personally.
Yeah.
They weren't just folks hired off to do these
No.
things. Yeah. Did he work for people like Bennett Homes and things like that?
No, they made enough money on themselves, just the two of them.
He worked for Reuter. I remember he worked for Reuter Construction
Yeah, but that was
later, much later.
Later, yeah.
And he worked for.
Reuter.
Do you remember Do you remember the other places he worked for? I don't.
Reuter Construction. Oh, they still. I work right now. I work for Carver at the Goose's. Where do I work?
Well, you don't work anymore. But
No.
when you worked at a lot of places.
The
Yeah.
last place I worked.
Well, the last place you worked was Social Security.
No.
But the last restaurant you worked at,
Yeah,
Barney's Grandsons.
Barney's. Okay.
Okay. There we go.
And anyway, where I'm working now is Social Security, and some of the friends that knew me at Barney's came over to visit, and they said, "Do you remember when you were a waitress? You gave us a drink under the table."
Oh.
I said, "Let's not pass that around."
Want some more water? Want some more water?
Thank you.
And you mentioned Barney's Grandsons. A lot of people have memories about that. Tell me what it was like to work over there, and the different people you used to meet over there.
Well, Barney's Grandson, when I started, it was mostly Bell Aircraft people that came there to eat. And in the kitchen was this grandma. That's, you do this and you do that.
Tough lady.
Huh?
A tough lady.
She was a tough lady.
Mm-hmm.
And so, actually, that's what we needed. We
Mhm.
needed to learn. And she made sure we learned. And that stayed with us. So,
I can respect that. And so Barney's Grandsons again. They were near Six Corners, and they used to be where Tim Hortons is today.
it used to be Shim Shacks.
No.
Oh, no.
That's
Yeah. But now it's like you were saying. It's Tim Hortons is there in that spot now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they tore the building down eventually. But do you recall the Fun Barn, Daisy's Distillery across the way, and that was there when I was
forgot about that.
when that was still standing there at the time, and what's now the Orange Tree restaurant behind you down the way, which was Diller's, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was also the Sound Barrier that was across the way from where the Carborundum was down
Do I
the
know
way
that?
on Walmore.
Where was
Yeah.
that?
Other spots like that. This was called the Sound Barrier.
Was it down? Is it down Walmart?
Yeah,
Like
Further
near
down more,
the runway area.
yeah. It's like an apartment thing now, But that was one. I came across various places like that as I was getting into my job. And I went through the old assessment records, the town assessment records, and those have pictures attached to them. And what I do is I post these online if I don't already know what they are. I post them on a Wheatfield History online Facebook group page where other people can see what I'm looking at, and if they are able to recognize the building from the old picture from the 50s, they'll leave comments down there in response to it and tell me about what these places were. Like the Sound Barrier, I didn't know where that was until enough people saw it that they figured, oh, that was on Walmart and that was a bar, basically. And you worked obviously at Barney's Grandsons, and that was around a long, long time too. But you also had the what's now Papa Leo's, but that was a pizza place for a long time too, right? And you had a service garage in front of you at the time. It was like a wedge-shaped auto mechanics.
Where
place,
was that
I
at?
think, yeah. That was between Cuba Drive Extension right there and the
Oh,
Boulevard.
right.
It's right there today, except that for the first time in it's not an 80-year life. It's a heating and cooling place now, but it had been an auto place for a while. Do you recall that place across the way from where you worked? Or?
Do you remember where Papa Leo's original
It
location?
was, yeah,
It's in that little building right next to the railroad tracks.
right over there. Yeah.
And then it was like a travel agency for a
It was
while.
We Feel Travel, and it was
Oh yeah.
That's where Papa Leo's originally.
Yeah, it was over there. And there was something else before that, too. Just like the current Papa Leo's, both of those small buildings have two sets of doors because they were originally built as little plazas.
Yeah, it was a barber shop and a coin shop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I know exactly.
And so down the way, you remember the Summit Park Mall?
Oh yeah.
What'd you think when that
Oh,
opened
I
up?
thought it was terrible. Terrible. They should never have closed that.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But
We used to go in there and ride our bicycles. Either a bicycle or had roller skates up and down the whole way.
Wow.
But what did you think when they first built it and they suddenly extended Jago Road? What did you think when they were doing that?
Well, Mama said, don't get any ideas. So
I loved when they built Jago Road Extension because for about a year, we could ride our mini bikes on a gravel road and nobody would yell at us.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
you were a boy.
Right.
You were a boy. Boys could do anything. Girls couldn't do anything wrong. I mean, couldn't anything right.
I don't know about that now.
And the Summit Park Mall, when it was built, was plopped on top of the Williams farm out that way.
Yeah.
You recall some of the
recall
farmers
that.
out there? Yeah. Arthur Williams, right? Yeah.
Bernice.
That was that his wife at the time? Yeah. Yeah, they had a big farm out that way. Wow. And Bell Aerospace, when that was going on at the time too. That's another big ball.
Oh, we hated that because we had a 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We all had to get off the road.
It's true.
Because here comes Bell Aircraft. Get off the road.
We'd play games in the streets, but when the people who lived down towards North Tonawanda would take Jago Road back home, and we had to get off the streets.
Yeah, really. Well, my grandfather was in that crowd.
He was.
As a manager, Clayton Georgia, he was manager of the helicopter division at Bell. He had been a worker and a supervisor, and he took his night classes. This guy had only a high school diploma, barely that, and he rose himself up to become a manager of half the whole thing. He knew Larry Bell. He knew a lot of the people who worked there, and he would have been part of that crew. And my mother would ask him, "What was it like?" He says, "Bumper to bumper. You didn't screw up on that road, on that boulevard. If you messed up, it could." Really take out everybody behind you. And he said, well, he worked off in Cheektowaga, and my mother recalled him saying he would just be coming home, and one of the guys at the plant, there'd be either a union issue or some other thing they'd have to address, or a part that they weren't sure was really working or not. And he'd get off the phone, he'd say, I gotta go back. He says, why? You just got back from home. And he said, and they go back and forth about it. He says, Mama, if something should go wrong at the plant, if that plate isn't fixed correctly and that it could happen overseas, and I would never live with myself. He had to be sure that every part was going to work together properly, or that the plating, the bulletproof plating or something was going to work okay.
Very diligent, very focused, very good for him.
It really was. So
the work ethic was incredible. Probably that work ethic right there.
And the work ethic on the farms too, right? I mean, you had to make a living.
Oh yeah.
Back in those days.
Yeah, when they milked the cows, they had to be washed. That had to be washed and cleaned after every cow.
Did you have a special? Did they have special cleaning methods for that, like udder cream, essentially, or?
Yeah. Well, eventually they got a thing. They hooked the whole thing up to the cow and turned it on.
Well, right, yeah.
And then it cleaned it. But at first we had to do it by hand.
And there was a special method of milking a cow. You didn't just grab and squeeze. You had to
I knew how to do
it.
it. I knew how to do that.
And you have to go out there too. Did you milk them and feed them and so forth? Now you had siblings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Do you have brothers and sisters? Tell me about them.
I had
again.
I had
Let's back up just
two.
a tiny bit.
Huh?
Let's back up just a tiny bit. You're kind of working your way closer and closer. You're in his personal space.
Let's take the break.
All right, there you go. All right.
Don't you agree? Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay, go ahead.
In the beginning,
Brothers and sisters.
in the beginning, I had two older brothers, Clarence and Harold, and then they both. Well, Clarence worked at the carborundum, and Harold was mostly home milking the cows.
Mhm.
And he was so patient with me, he would let me stand at the barn door and watch. And so that's how I learned to milk a cow, but just by watching.
And then you had a sister.
And then my sister came along, and that was Dorothy. And
And her last name became
Wolf.
Mhm.
Dorothy Wolf.
Ben Wolf was her husband, right?
And then everybody got, well, Dorothy worked as a housekeeper in the falls for a while.
Hmm.
And then Jimmy and I were alone. So
And Jimmy's younger than you, correct?
2 years younger.
2 years younger.
And your maiden name is
Heuer.
Hey Heuer. Okay, all right. And you were cousins to each other, I think, right?
We what?
Jimmy Heuer is related to you.
Yeah.
He's his
Yes.
brother. Your brother.
Her brother, yeah. Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
so Jim
Okay.
Heuer is her brother.
Double checking there.
Yeah, he's yeah. Everyone knows Jim Heuer.
Absolutely. I interviewed him too. Yeah.
You did?
I did, yeah.
You interviewed him?
Mm-hmm. Earlier, yeah. I asked him how he became a councilman, and Winston Moeller
Oh yeah.
helped to convince him to run for office. And the way he talks is I was coming off of the way I was working at the time. And he says, "Well, you make a good councilman, I think." And Jimmy goes, "Well, I figured I'd put my hat in the ring." And he said, "You know everybody, and the Hoyers know everybody pretty much. And we were looking for someone to fill this ticket." And he says, "Who knew I'd be there for how many years?"
So many.
And everything else, very committed person. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great.
And he runs our family reunion every year.
Yeah,
Uncle Jim is like,
Yeah.
it's right at noon. We say the German table prayer, and we're off and
Yeah. Off and
running.
you have to have me be a fly on the wall for that.
Oh,
by the way,
you
know.
Second
Yeah,
week in August. Right?
Yes.
yeah.
You should come. We,
I would love
we are sending out the invitations.
Yeah.
We could include you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Just to sort of go around and take
Yeah.
a couple of pictures.
Would you come?
Yes, I would love to.
Please,
Oh.
when we're done, give us your address.
I will.
Yeah. Name and address on a card.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, I've got a card.
Let's pour water.
Oh yeah.
So we're in charge of sending the invitations.
Oh,
We'll make sure.
perfect.
We'll make sure.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. And you've been through so much in the town. What were certain things, or did you ever go to town board meetings
Oh
or
yeah.
things like that? What were some of the discussions back in the day or
Well, Jimmy would be better at telling you that
right? Oh, okay. Well, right.
because I
Right.
sat out in the audience, and sometimes the audience was kind of loud. So, but Jimmy would know.
Yeah, he talked more about. He seemed to figure that there was more farm talk back in the day. I mean, there were more things.
And there wasn't. It wasn't all farm.
Yeah, but he did mention some of that
Yeah.
being, a thing where some development or some infrastructure was going to be put in, and they'd have
Oh
to try
yeah.
to work around.
We got so upset when all these different structures went in
Mhm.
because we were a farm. We were a farm area, and we were just kids playing up and down the road, and what have you. And
Mm.
pretty soon, all these farms were built. Not farms, houses.
Mhm.
Developments went in, and pretty soon there was kids up and down the road. Well, that had to stop.
It changed the way you knew. Right?
Yeah, changed the way I grew up.
Mhm. And these are some of the earlier developments, like Cape Cod kind of houses, but even before then, right? These are
I don't know what style. I'm not sure.
not that way.
I don't know if she would know that. Yes.
Yeah.
What were some and then what were some of the other jobs that Grandpa had multiple jobs? But I heard the other day that he was actually the mailman for a while.
Well, growing up, he was a mailman with a horse and buggy.
Yeah, and he would deliver on horse.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Horse and buggy.
Huh.
So he had a lot of different jobs.
Yeah, he did.
What were some of the other jobs you did?
Well, I was going to school for 8 years, and then I graduated, and then Miss Shunky was her name, wanted me to stay one more grade because she saw some potential in me, and she would like me to stay one more year. And then I went to I have
You're wandering.
I have a walking leg.
You're wandering the planet.
Good for her.
But didn't you? You delivered in a truck of some sort.
Oh, that was before, Davis Dry Cleaning.
Mm.
Boy, don't you think that was a hard job?
Mm-hmm.
Davis Dry Cleaning. I had to every week. Whoever had dirty clothes, hung their sign in the window, and I had to stop, get their dirty clothes in a bag, and put their name and address on it. And I had to do that once a week.
Is that how you learned to drive? Was you learned?
No, I knew how to drive.
You knew how to drive.
I knew how to drive.
But wasn't there something about that truck? It was like a stick shift that you didn't know, or I feel like you've told me stories about driving that truck.
Yeah, I didn't know about how to shift, and Dad came and sat in the car with me and said, "Now shift it in first, shift it in second." Yeah, he taught me how to shift.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you take the dirty clothes?
Into Davis Dry Cleaning on Pine Avenue.
Oh, okay.
I just had to handle them once. Oh, that was enough.
Did you have to return them then?
Yeah.
So you would go to the same places and then return the clean clothes.
Yeah.
And then you had lots of different waitress jobs. I can think of a couple.
All right, name them.
I can think of the Howard Johnson's right by the falls.
Oh yeah.
Where they used to have the helicopter would land on top, and for the tours.
Sure.
And you worked at the Greens.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was like at the golf
at
club.
The golf course and golf. You know where the golf course is?
Off that way, yeah.
And then I remember. And then I remember Barney's, and I know there were others, but I can't remember what the others were.
I think there was a lot of others.
That might be the main ones.
Those were the main ones.
And what was my job after you got home from being a waitress?
Counting my change.
Yeah, counting the tips. And separating out the Canadian.
How many tips did you get?
Yeah, we'd separate the Canadian money, and we'd use that to go to Crystal Beach.
Oh, really?
That's right.
Oh, my goodness, sure.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but I mean, they were. They only had a few years to go by the time I was born. Yes. In '83, but
it was a great place.
Yeah.
You've never been there?
I was never there when they were open.
Oh.
Yeah, they were. It's all condos there now and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What a disappointment.
Waterfront property.
So it was some waterfront property, and Canadian waterfront property, which means it's even more expensive over here than over here. Do you recall other places like Kroll's Inn, Kroll's Tavern?
Oh yeah, Kroll's that was on Walmart Road.
Oh, you mean Ward Road?
Huh?
Ward Road.
No, Kroll's was on Walmart, wasn't it?
I believe him. He's the historian.
The Walmart Inn was.
You're talking.
Yeah, that's a
Kroll's. I don't remember Kroll's.
Yeah, it's just down the way on Niagara Falls Boulevard and Ward Road. There, it had been there for many years. It was a very famous spot in town. But
what is it? Is it still there?
Oh, it's where the 7-Eleven is today, where Wilson Farms
Oh,
was before that.
Hmm.
Wilson Farms, when that was built, it was
Hmm.
set further back.
Okay.
Kroll's Tavern was a much older building. It was
Was
way
this
up on the
was
corner.
this a tavern or
It was a tavern. It was a tavern too, because it was a bar, a restaurant, as well as an inn. People work on the boulevard typically would
well,
live
I
in there.
remember when I was going
It
with
was right next to
Holly,
town hall.
we went there. We went to this place one time for a drink, or it was Friday night. We were going for a fish fry, and oh my gosh, we sat. This place was freezing. It had strips of wood like this all the way around. I mean, it wasn't.
So the air could go through.
Yeah, there wasn't any.
Yeah.
There wasn't any heat in there.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
I wonder what that was.
Yeah, there were several other ones. Taggart's was one. The Creekside
I remember Creekside.
bar was close to Eric Road on the boulevard. Sawyer's Creek or Sawyer Creek bar. That's
We
there
love
today.
that place.
Yeah, I love it there too.
Yeah.
Best fish fries, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Beef on Wick too.
Yeah, beef on Wick. Yeah.
I remember I used to take you there to Sawyer Creek.
And I couldn't climb the stairs. You used
Cause
to have to carry me up the stairs.
So, because she was in her wheel, and I did
Well,
it
yeah.
all alone one time. I go, balance here. I quick carried her wheelchair to the top,
Oh.
ran back down, and then helped her up.
We worked it out.
We worked
Right.
anything for a fish fry, right, Mom? Anything for a good fish fry.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You should have you back. We'll help you out though over there. I'll tell you, Brad Casada. Brad, come down here on. It's such a historic building, you can't really modify
sure.
it. So
For
it's gotta try to work with it and everything. Anything else you guys would like to ask or add to? Because I can always come back anyways as we, But
How about the airport?
yeah.
Do you remember, was it? Do you remember when did it go? Was it always there? Was the airport always there? Even even as a child, was there just smaller or what?
Smaller airport.
Mm.
It was small. It was an airport, but we never had big airplanes land.
Yeah, and that was before Bell Aerospace existed. And
Yeah.
all that. That must have been big construction
Oh
when they
yeah.
built Bell Aerospace.
Mhm.
What were your feelings on the
Well,
farm about such a
didn't
huge
like
thing
it.
coming?
We didn't like it because we were a small area, and we wanted to stay a small area.
Mm.
Well,
It really changed the
Bell
footprint.
Aircraft had their changed our minds. Says, okay, here's this many money,
Mhm.
Just open your gates.